Welcome to Wheelock's Latin, Chapter 14. In this chapter, we're going to learn about third declension I-stem endings and some uses of the ablative. So first, let's look at third declension I-stem endings. To review, let's compare it to the endings we learned in Chapter 7 for third declension nouns. Those endings we call the consonant stem endings. Our sample noun is rex, regis, regi, regem, rege, reges, regum, regibus, reges, regibus. This is a consonant stem, and these are the masculine and feminine endings. Rex happens to be masculine. For the new material, if you have a masculine and feminine third declension noun that is an I stem, you'll notice that most of the endings are the same. So for example, kiwis, kiwis, kiwi, kiwem, kiwe. And in the plural, kiwes, the new form is that the genitive plural of an I stem has I before the um, so kiwium. But then we're back to kiwibus and kiwes. For I stem nouns only in the masculine and feminine, an alternative ending for the accusative plural is long is. You'll see this very commonly in real Latin, but Wheelock doesn't use it as often. The ablative plural is kiwibus. In Chapter 7, we also learned the endings for neuter third declension nouns. These, again, were the consonant stems. So a sample noun is tempus, tempus, temporis, tempori, tempus, tempora, tempora, temporum, temporibus, tempora, temporibus. Now we learn that if a neuter third declension noun is an I stem, it'll be different in 4 places. So in the ablative singular, mari, long I instead of short e. In the nominative plural, there's an I before the A, so Maria, with the accent on the third to last syllable, as opposed to the name Maria, which has the accent on the second to last syllable. In the genitive plural, Mariam, with an I before the and in the accusative plural, because the accusative in the neuter is always equal to the nominative, Maria again. But then for dative and ablative, maribus. So notice in blue the places where the I stem endings differ from the consonant stem endings. Of course, the next thing you want to know is, how do you know if the third declension noun is going to follow the consonant stem endings or the I stem endings? This brings us to the next slide. So there are 3 rules for identifying when this particular noun is going to have the I stem endings. Rule number 1 only applies to masculine and feminine nouns. If the noun is parasyllabic, which means that if you look at the nominative singular and the genitive singular, i.e. the dictionary entry, and those 2 forms have the same number of syllables, then it will follow the I stem patterns. So, for example, hostis, hostis, you would call first part of the dictionary entry as nominative singular, second part genitive singular, third part gender. Hostis, hostis both have 2 syllables, it's parasyllabic. Same with nawis, nawis, and nubes, nubes. That applies to masculine and feminine nouns only. If your third declension noun is masculine and feminine, and the base, which is sometimes also called the stem, ends in 2 consonants, then it's an I stem and will follow the I stem patterns. In these nouns, you'll notice that the nominative singular then ends in X or S. You have to go to the genitive singular to get the base, or the stem. So in orps, orbis, you'll see that the nominative ends in an S, and then if you go to the genitive and then lop off the ending IS, you see that the stem or base ends in RB. 2 consonants. Therefore, this is an I stem noun and will follow the I stem patterns. Another one is nox noctis. The nominative ends in X and the base ends in CT, 2 consonants, so this is an I stem. Our last rule applies to only the neuter nouns of the third declension. If a neuter noun of the third declension has a nominative ending in AL, AR, or E, it is an I stem and follows the I stem patterns. So, for example, animal, animalis, and exemplar, exemplaris. These rules only apply to third declension nouns. Rules 1 and 2 apply to masculine and feminine third declension nouns, and Rule 3 applies to neuter third declension nouns. In the masculine and feminine, there's only going to be one difference between the consonant stems, and that is that the genitive plural ends in IUM instead of UM. There is this other alternative ending where the accusative plural can end in long IS. We won't see it often in Wheelock, but you'll see it a lot later. For the neuter nouns, there's a few more differences. The ablative singular has a long I instead of a short E. Nominative and accusative plural have IA, and genitive plural has IUM. There is an irregular noun that's a third declension, mostly I stem. It's wees, wees. So wees is the nominative. Wees is also the genitive. It's in parentheses because it rarely occurs in actual Latin. This noun means force. The dative is we, the accusative is whim, and the ablative is we. In the plural, weirace with the stem V long I R. Use this stem to add the I stem endings onto it, so weirium, weiribus, weirace, weiribus. So this is mostly a third declension I stem. You'll see that the accusative singular ends in IM instead of EM, and the ablative singular has a long I, even though in I stem nouns, masculine and feminine usually has the short E. This is a feminine noun. In the plural, you see the IUM and the rest of the third declension endings that you would expect. Don't confuse this word with the word for man, weary. This is a regular second declension noun with a consistent stem of weir throughout. So in the singular, weiro, weirum, weiro. In the plural, weiri, weirorum, weiris, weiros, weiris. So you'll notice in the plural that both of these nouns have the stem weir, but the word for force has the third declension endings, and the word for man has the second declension endings. So there you see in the singular consistent second declension endings, and in the plural, the stem weir, consistent second declension endings. So for the last topic of this chapter, let's look at some uses of the ablative. We've seen it before with prepositions indicating place where. So for example, in casa, in the house, sub casa, under the house, pro casa, in front of the house. We've also seen it before with prepositions indicating place from which or separation. So a or ab, meaning away from. This preposition can also have a very different meaning, which is by, but it still takes the ablative, even though that doesn't have the same connotation of separation. Another one is ex, meaning out of, sine, meaning without, and de, meaning down from. This is another one where there's a very different meaning from down from, that is concerning or about. Both of those meanings, no matter what the meaning, de takes the ablative. We've also seen the ablative with prepositions showing accompaniment. So we've seen cum, meaning with, as in cum amicis, with friends. And we've seen the ablative with a preposition showing manner, like cum cura, with care, or cum virtute, with virtue. Our last new meaning is means or instrument, and it does not take a preposition. Let's look at this one on the next slide. So the ablative of means or instrument is an ablative noun without a preposition. There are other uses of the ablative that do not take a preposition, and we will learn them later. This is just one possible translation of the ablative without a preposition. It answers the question, by means of what, or with what? So in the sample sentence, litera stilo scripsit, he, she wrote a letter with a stylus, ablative of means, by means of what? With what? With a stylus. Sample sentence, cives pecunia vicit, he conquered the citizens with money, by means of what? How did he do it? He did it with money. Id meis oculis vidit, I saw it with my own eyes. Suis laboribus urbum conservavit, he saved the city by his own labor. All of these answer the question, by means of what or with what. When you're translating English to Latin, that's when you really have to understand whether you need a preposition or no preposition. And if you need a preposition, which one do you want? So in English, does with express a means or an instrument, like I wrote it with a pen? Then you don't use a preposition, you just use the word in the ablative. If in your English sentence with expresses manner or accompaniment, then you do use the preposition cum. That's it for now. See you next time.